on our deer project leader, Mr. James Kelly.
Thank you, Chairman Holbert. I've been challenged to be brief by Assistant Director Wilson, and so I told him challenge accepted. But I do want to really quick thank Ken Tarkington for teaching me the origins of the words hooker and sideburns. I told Lee he should tweet that out, but I don't know if he listened to me or not. So, as you know, we've been working on the strategic plan for deer management. And again, I am going to be brief. And the last time I presented on kind of a progress report was back in December. And at that meeting, I had just, again, trying to be very brief. At that meeting, I had talked about the genesis of the deer team, some workshops and trainings and listening sessions that we had conducted, and consulting with experts in strategic planning and heeding their advice to hire an expert into strategic planning to kind of walk through this with us and to ensure that we engage stakeholders in the process. So I'm going to share a little bit about what we've been up to since that last official update. So in January, we held a manager's model workshop, and this was a 3-day retreat at a retreat center called Deer Run. So it was very appropriate considering the deer team met there. And it was a 3-day retreat. And what a manager's model is the way the professor who developed it is basically the objective of this workshop is for the team to come to a common understanding of the management system that we work in as wildlife professionals, and then coming up with a desired future condition for that management system. So I want to share, this is a picture from that workshop, and there was lots of flip charts. We were seeing flip charts in our dreams during those 3 days. But I want to share our desired future condition statement. This was kind of the foundation of the whole workshop, and is also this desired future condition is what we're working towards in this 5-year plan. This isn't necessarily a desired future condition for 5 years from now, but maybe 30, 50 years from now. So this is what we came up with, and I'll share that with you. It says, white-tailed deer populations are managed within an adaptive framework utilizing scientifically valid information at the management unit level. Objectives for each unit balance biological and social carrying capacity by considering the values of stakeholders. In regular proactive engagement with stakeholders identifies significant changes in stakeholder values and/or social carrying capacity that may warrant adjustment of objectives within a unit. So that's what's referred to as our desired future condition statement. And once we get to the place where we're ready to share a draft with the commission, you will see this statement at, near the top of the plan. So there was the manager's model workshop in January, and then the very next month we held the Southeast Deer Study Group meeting. This is a meeting that's held annually. It's held within the Southeast, but wildlife or deer professionals from all over the country attend it, and it was Tennessee's turn to host it this year. And given everything that we've been charged with, and this is also a monumental task, we decided to integrate these two efforts, and we made the theme of the meeting stakeholder focused, science-based, and data-driven. And as a subtitle, we asked this question: is this the gold standard for the state deer management system? And those 3 hyphenated words there, that's essentially what that desired future condition statement is saying as well. So that's where we wanted to head, but we also wanted to kind of vet this with our peers in our neighbor states, and we also invited experts from around the country that are experts in just kind of a big deal in the world of state agency deer management. And we asked them we asked them this question during the plenary session. Those are the experts on the stage there. And it was a resounding yes, that this is the gold standard. So good affirmation there that we were headed in the right direction as far as what we're planning to do. And again, this is largely focused on process. You'll actually see the guts of the plan at a later commission meeting. I just wanted to share kind of what we've been up to, kind of informing the Deer team as we get content and iterate through different versions of the plan. So, as I mentioned, the consults we did with experts around the country, they said we needed to bring somebody on and kind of walk through this with us and facilitate our interactions with stakeholders and also help us to facilitate our internal meetings and make sure we can put all that content effectively into a strategic plan. And so we hired DJ Case and Associates. They're a very reputable firm in the realm of natural resources. Just at this moment, I know they're at some level involved in R3 efforts. They're developing a strategic plan for the Quality Deer Management Association, and they just got hired to help Oklahoma's Wildlife Agency develop their agency strategic plan. So very reputable source, and they submitted a proposal on how to come up with this plan between then February and I think the end of the contract is this fall. So under their tutelage, if you will, we've had several Deer team meetings beginning in March. We've met every month, and except for the month of June, and we were up to a couple of other things in June that I'll talk about next. But we've been meeting. DJ Case and Associates have been facilitating those Deer team meetings, and right away in March we started our first iteration of the plan, and I'm kind of the lead author on the plan, and we're doing a lot of work outside of meetings and then doing more focused work inside of meetings. And so a lot of plan writing, a lot of iterating and vetting things that we're planning to work on. And the next thing I wanted to talk about was as part of DJ Case's proposal, they recommended that we hold these stakeholder focus group meetings. Basically, what this was, we met with two different groups of stakeholder representatives on 2 consecutive nights in June, and we invited agricultural interests, a lot of sportsmen's interest, academia, partner agencies like TDOT, state parks. We had the Nature Conservancy there. Yeah, a lot of diverse. I think we had all of the various perspectives as it relates to deer at the table, and all of the major players at the table. And this is, we forgot to take a picture the first night. This is the second night, and Chairman Holbert was there, and that's Dave Case of DJ Case, also at the head of the table. And basically they asked 5 questions. Do we need a plan? And it was a resounding yes. The best and worst thing about deer management in Tennessee. What does the plan have to do? Or what were the major threats, and then what was the plan have to do? And to be brief, there was no major crises identified with deer management in Tennessee. Things are pretty good. Concern is chronic wasting disease, and there was a lot of praise for the agency and the commission for how seriously we're taking that threat. As far as what the, I guess, sentiment or consensus, if you will, from the group was, there was no voting on anything. It was just purely a listening session, but words that we heard a lot were science and data and accountability. And if I'm misrepresenting anything there, if Mr. Butler, if you're here, if you want to share anything about that afterwards, or Chairman Holbert, you can as well. So, but overall it was a very positive experience, and everyone at the table was very glad that we were engaging them in strategic planning, and glad that we were developing a strategic plan. Also in June, DJ Case held interviews with select commissioners. We wish we could have had them interview all of the commissioners, but due to budgetary constraints, they proposed to interview with the chair of the Wildlife Committee and then have the chair pick 2 other commissioners to interview, just to kind of get their expectations for the plan and a lot of the same questions that we asked at the focus group meetings. And again, we've been iterating through the plan, and I assure you there is a plan. If there's any rumors that we haven't started on a plan, and I'm not going to go into the guts of the plan today for the sake of time. So what's next in the process? So from now into September, we're again continue to iterate with the team on the plan and vet it internally. We're going to be holding public meetings, 3 public meetings, a West Tennessee, Middle Tennessee, and East Tennessee public meeting, 4th, 5th, and 6th, respectively. And those details on those are will be announced in the coming weeks. And yeah, and then we'll revise our plan appropriately based on what we learn at those meetings. And I also should back up, going back to the stakeholder focus group meetings. We weren't trying to convince them of anything, and we were kind of heading a certain direction with the plan already, and what we heard from the stakeholders was very affirming of the direction we were already heading. And so we want to approach the public meetings that same way, that there's still something to be learned there. And so then this fall into the winter, we'll continue to we'll hopefully have a pretty near final internal draft and vet that fully internally, get executive level approval, present it to the commission for a preview. At that time, we'll kind of share the guts of the plan, and have at that time plan to have it go up for public comment, allow for time for revisions. Best case scenario, we'll present it to you for final adoption in January. Worst case scenario, final adoption in February. So, thank you.
Thank you, James. First off, I'd like to echo everything you said, and you said it right. I noticed Butler gave you a thumbs up. So
good.
Anyway, I do want to commend you guys on the job you're doing.
Thank you.
The meetings with the stakeholder was really amazing, and the difference in the 2 nights amazed me. It was unreal, the differences in the way they viewed deer management and their answers. But thanks for inviting me. Thanks to Director Carter and Bobby for allowing y'all to do all this. I was amazed at the cost of it, but I do think it's money well spent with what you're doing. But kudos to you.
Thank you.
Any questions, commissioners?
Will you be notifying the commissioner when you're going to have the public meetings in their areas prior to the meeting?
As soon as we have, and I'll just go ahead and tell you, we're going to do in Jackson for the West Tennessee, Murfreesboro for the Middle Tennessee, and Knoxville. And Murfreesboro will be at the Ag Center. Knoxville will be at the UT. There's a meeting center at UT. And the Jackson one, tentatively, the UT experiment station, that's to be confirmed though. But we'll definitely, as soon as we know for sure, we'll let the commissioners know.
Any other questions? And he threw me under the bus on the 2 commissioners that got interviewed. I know, but they wanted the most talented commissioners. So if you didn't get called, I don't know what that means, Mr. Cox. Did you get called? No comment. Thanks, James. Cut his microphone off over there. Oh, me. Chris Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I wanted to provide you just a very brief update on our elk raffle, which is going extraordinarily well. I think many of you know, thanks to you giving some priority to the winner of the elk raffle as far as zones are concerned, and also the foundation's work to secure firearm and scope and a very nice package of prizes. That raffle ticket has been very popular and is selling very well. That raffle will continue to stay open until August the 15th at 11:59 p.m. And we hope to continue to sell many more tickets between now and then. That's where we are, Mr. Chairman. I would also mention that I think one thing that I would like the commission, certainly not at this meeting, but in a future meeting, to potentially consider our authority to raffle that elk tag is currently set in statute and is limited to one special elk tag. I think there might be an opportunity based on the success of this raffle to consider potentially asking the legislature to expand that authority a little bit and maybe be able to do something similar with some other unique opportunities in Tennessee in future years. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to answer any questions the commission has.
I've got a question. Is there a possibility of maybe expanding this to other areas?
I think there would be, Commissioner. It would take a statutory change, but based on what I think will be a very successful amount of money raised for this program out of this raffle, I think we have an opportunity to talk with our policymakers in Nashville and tell them this is a popular program and one that could warrant some expansion into other areas of Tennessee and other opportunities for hunters.
All right. I think it's definitely something we need to look into, and I know you're down there, but we've got some outstanding deer places, duck places that I think would really generate a lot of money if we could pick one of those out. So, any other questions for Chris?
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris. Anybody else got anything on the Wildlife Committee?
Let me ask one thing, and I don't think our elk coordinator's here, so I'll ask the director. Is on the elk plan, I'm not sure if he's completely through with it or not, but do you plan to pass that written plan to the commissioners?
Yes,
or
we
is
do.
it, would you do that?
Yeah, the plan is, when the plan is completely finalized, it's to be brought to the commission, and just like we would ask for approval for anything else, we'd bring it. Doesn't really need approval, but we certainly want your blessing to go forward with it.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes the business of the Wildlife Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to commend you and the agency for the work you've done on that elk raffle. I think that's a huge success, and appreciate everybody taking care of that so efficiently to get through the process, get approval, and I think it's a great program, so commend you for the work you did on that, so thank you. With that, I'd like to recognize Chairman Box for the Boating and Law Enforcement Committee meeting.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to call on Colonel Darren Ryder, please, to the front.
Thank you, Commissioner Box. What I'd like to do now is take the time to show you a few slides from our law enforcement and education efforts and our accident work from 2018, and especially to highlight some of the holidays that we've encountered so far. So if I could take you back to our Memorial Day weekend efforts. That was a 3-day event. That is unofficially the start of our boating season. So as you can see, our statistics there, we have over 7,700 inspections, 300 citations, 200 warnings. We had 10 BUI arrests, and we've assisted 169 boaters. So then our next big event is actually a national campaign. It's called Operation Dry Water. That was started back in 2009, and Tennessee has participated in all the years for this national campaign. And the focus on this campaign was to kind of educate and enforce impaired operation just prior to the 4th, and maybe we could save some lives the 4th if we caught them the weekend before. So it's quite an event. It's participated nationwide by all police agencies and wildlife agencies and things like that. So the event, that was another 3-day event. As you can see, we had nearly 6,000 inspections, wrote over 230 citations, 145 warnings, made 9 BUI arrests, and we assisted 162 boaters. So from the inception of that program, from 2009 to 2017, the 2018 data is not in yet, but the national campaign has had 3,038 BUI arrests, over 478,000 boats have been inspected, and over 1.1 million boaters have been contacted through this program. Just as a side note, it's interesting, 2012 Michigan, 2016 Indiana, the highest BAC was 0.38. So they might have been drinking straight Aqua Velva or something like that. So our next event is our most recent event, is Independence Day. This is a one-day event that we captured the stats on. So as you can see, we were close to 3,000 inspections, had 100 citations, 64 warnings, and made 6 BUI arrests, and we assisted 123 boaters. Now, on the accident side, these show the 3 events, the accidents that we had, the injuries that were involved, and the fatalities involved. For those 3 events, Memorial Day, we had 5 accidents, 3 injuries, 0 fatalities. Operation Dry Water, that other event, 3 accidents, 1 injury, and 1 fatality. And then on Independence Day, we had 8 accidents, 3 injuries, and 2 fatalities, most recently. And comparing, so this is from 2018 to current, including the 3 events. These are our stats on where they are today. And of course, we'll continue those stats until we close out the year in. But we're at 65 accidents. We have 22 injuries, 14 fatals. We were up to 55 BUI arrests, and we've assisted over 1,019 boaters. Now, the 5-year trend, just to put it in perspective, we average, 5-year trend shows that we average 132 accidents a year. We have 19 fatal accidents a year, 60 injury accidents a year, 53 property damage accidents a year, and then we average about 95 BUIs annually for the last 5 years. These were our totals from 2017. And so we expect our numbers to finally show that when we finish with our year. We'll inspect between 60 and 65,000 boats. We'll write 2,500 citations, a couple thousand warnings, and we'll make 95 BUI arrests, and then we'll assist over 1,500 boaters. So those are our 17 closeout numbers, and we'll continue to collect our 2018 numbers. So, in conclusion, if you look at these stats, the amount of energy, the time, the effort, the hours, the dedication that our officers provide to keep our Tennessee waters safe and enjoyable, they're to be commended for that. And as a side note, July 4th, when it was 110, 111 heat index, our officers stayed true to their professionalism. They were true professionals. So that they're commended for that. And then as a personal, if y'all encounter them and when y'all out running around, if y'all just take the time to tell them thanks for what they do, that will go awful long ways, and we appreciate it. So that's all. That's my stats. So any questions from the commissioners would be.
I wanted to bring this up today. My family and I have been on the water a lot this summer, and I just wanted to thank y'all for everything you do. And it's especially holiday weekends, and it's crazy. And it's a huge challenge, and I appreciate everything y'all done. We've seen you out there working, and I just want to say thank you for everything.
See, I've learned to work early, so when the heat gets at 111, I go to the house. But that day, July 4th, I worked Kentucky Lake, and it was, as you go into all the creeks, most people were out of their boats into the water trying to seek some comfort, because but a lot of people were in the water those hot days.
Well, and I appreciate all that stats. That was very informative and thorough. I appreciate you doing that. Do we have a question from the commission?
So I know it's a committee day, but being that we're not going to have a boating law enforcement discussion tomorrow, would it be okay with you if Commissioner Woods, he has a question? So,
sure. Yeah.
I'll try to make it as quick as I can, Darren, but this has to do with, I think we could have done saved a life by now, and I think in the future this would help save some lives. I guess you're aware we had a drowning on Douglas Lake, the lake I live on, last week.
Yes, sir, on July 4th.
Yeah, and this new law that went into effect that rental boat, if you rent a boat, you have to have a boater's license.
Yes.
Does the boat rental place have to see proof of that?
They ask for that, and it's incumbent upon the operator to have that in their possession. So that's a way we can check, but we've encouraged and educated the marina owner operators, is what I call them, it would be, yes, please ask. And We've also got an effort to be a monitor. So our education coordinator, Betsy Wood, has reached out to the marinas and asked if they have an employee that wants to monitor to test, and if a renter shows up that doesn't have the education, we can provide that platform for them. Or we're trying to see if these marina owners have internet service so they can go on there and take the educational test before they rent it. But the operator has to have that education, yes, sir.
Okay, well, where I'm going with this, I mean, I know other lakes are way different, but on my lake, there's probably 60, 75 rental boats. And the officers have went around and talked to the marinas, and the response they got was, we're still gonna rent our boats. We're renting our boats anyway. They're mad that they did it, and they're not going to ask, they're not doing anything. Sunday afternoon, I was getting gas at a marina, and the marina beside of it is the main renter on this lake. That's one I've got my troubles with. There was probably 12 people on that boat coming right out before they just rented the boat. 2 women standing up holding 1-year-old kids with no life jackets on. And where I'm going with this is, a while back I asked if we could do TWRA come up with some duplicate forms with a safety checklist that marina that rents that boat, it's going to be mandatory that you go over this and you check it off with them, and the boat operator signs it and the rental company signs it also, saying that they did do it. And if an officer sees somebody doing something wrong on a boat and they pull out that piece of paper and show them, look, you was told not to do this, I think we could save some lives right there. The gentleman that drowned last week was from North Carolina, rented a boat. And, well, I was told it was a rental boat. I don't know it for a fact, but it, you know, just wasn't taught any safety. But I really think instead of, I mean, whatever you want to do about the boater license, fine with me, but I'd really like to see this duplicate form put in place, and it be mandatory across the state of Tennessee that they give these people that don't, I mean, first-time renters or 10-time renters, whatever, they still don't know what they're doing.
Yes, sir.
Could we
We can look into that, absolutely. I'll get with Chris, and we can talk that and discuss that out. If we need to get back to you, we will.
I really feel like that if we could educate these people right before they go on the water, you know, they're gonna, hey, I just signed this paper, now everybody, right here's our rules for today, or things we can't do, in other words. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions from the commission? Okay. Thank you so much for everything. Appreciate it. Mr. Chris Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. As many of you are aware, most all of you are aware, this past legislative session, the General Assembly gave this Commission some additional responsibility. We're calling this the River Conflicts Committee. What it deals with is the conflicts between paddlecraft and fishermen, motorized vessels and paddlecraft, motorized vessels and fishermen. Basically, our rivers are becoming such a popular place to be, and there are businesses operating within the state commercially that are putting more boats on the water than we've ever seen. And this past legislative session, the legislature gave this commission the responsibility to regulate those commercial paddlecraft operations. You do not have any authority over recreational, individually owned paddlecraft, but now the legislature has given you the responsibility of passing rules and regulations to try to manage some of the conflicts that we're seeing out there. This law just went into effect on July the 1st, and I'm heading up a group of folks within the agency and within the industry to look at how we can best move forward with those types of regulations. To me, the most logical place to start is going to be the general permitting of those operators. That's going to allow us to know how many are operating, how many boats they have, what bodies of water they're operating on, to gain a better understanding of what additional regulations we may need to put in place on specific waterways. I should also tell you, since we are in Chattanooga, that the legislature thought to exempt the Ocoee River system and also those commercial operations that are ongoing contained within the national parks and national forests from your regulation, due to the fact that they're already under regulation from either the federal government or, in the case of the Ocoee, TDEC has that whitewater operation. So this is going to be more limited to the flat waters, mostly Middle Tennessee, but also some opportunities and some conflicts that are going on in East Tennessee and West Tennessee. I fully expect to have a draft rule that will create the initial permit for the outfitter in draft form by the August commission meeting. At that time, it will give you something that you can review, and we can hopefully get that filed for your consideration and vote sometime, hopefully in October. That is a loose timeline of where we would go with what I consider to be phase 1 of these regulations, which is just to establish the general operating permit so we can kind of find out and have a better idea how many of these commercial operations are in the state and the impacts that they're having on specific waterways. That's my plan. I expect to bring in interested groups, whether they be fishermen, the paddlecraft operators themselves, recreational paddlers. Obviously, we have a team within the agency of our fishing division, our law enforcement division, that will all be involved in crafting this regulation. So a lot of work to be done and a lot of responsibility that the General Assembly has given you, but it's a very important issue in the state that I think both sides, both the commercial operators, the fishermen, all of the users of our rivers are going to benefit from the clarity and consistency of how we should operate and how these things should go forward. So with that, Madam Chairman, I'll be happy to answer any questions the Commission has.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from the Commission? Nothing? All right.
Thank you,
Thank you, sir.
Chair.
Appreciate it. Thank you. And going to call on Mr. Chairman Sanders. Okay.
I better wake up. Thank you. All right. I want to call Joe Benedict to, see, I got it right, Joe, to the podium.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, and Commissioners. I think I'm here to give my shortest presentation ever. I've got one item for you. It's a budget expansion. The information in your packet, I think, has 2 expansions, and the second one you guys will see next month, I believe. So the request that we have today is a budget expansion of $500,000. This is all 100% federal funding. This is for a waterfowl habitat project on 2 wildlife management areas in West Tennessee, the John Tully WMA and then the Eagle Lake Refuge. And it's specifically to install wells so we can pump water and flood those areas in the fall and winter. I also want to mention that Ashland Sutherland, I'm sorry, had a name block there, from Ducks Unlimited is here, and the match for this PR funds will come strictly from Ducks Unlimited, and Ashland is the major donor fundraising director for Ducks Unlimited. So he's worked with a lot of private land folks, citizens that are stakeholders of ours, and they've donated the funds to make this possible. So I just wanted to mention that and thank our great partners at Ducks Unlimited.
Motion for approval. We have a motion for approval. Do we have a second? Second. Any discussion? Any comments from the public? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, Joe. I'd like to call Tim Churchill, or not. You don't look like Tim.
Designated hitter. Committee Chairman Sanders, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, in May we brought a recommendation to you to allow the agency to close some gas and oil wells up on the Cumberland Plateau. 2 properties, the Gunsight Mountain and McCart. This was deferred until this meeting so you could have some additional time to study this issue and There is a briefing paper in your packets that I hope answers most of the questions that came up in May. To be clear, this is, we're asking for $460,000 of wetlands funds to close out approximately 15 wells. Somewhere between $20,000 and $25,000 of this goes to improving road access so we can actually get to the well. So there will be long-term benefit to the hunters for access to these two properties. The McCart track is currently not open to the public. The Gunsight Mountain property is open to the public. All of these will be wetlands funds, and were really calculated into the bargain price that the agency paid for these two properties. I want to be clear that the agency nor the commission has any regulatory or statutory responsibility to close these wells. We are doing this as a public safety and environmental safety project, and we hope that this demonstrates best management of properties that will be of great value to hunters and fishermen when we get this restoration done. In the past, the agency has done restoration on old mine sites, acid mine drainage, high walls. This is not a new field for the agency, even though it might be a new consideration for the commission. So after much thought, Chairman, the agency would ask you to consider funding these well closures.
Thank you. All right, you've heard the presentation. Is there a motion? We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. Any discussion? Any discussion from the public? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. All right.
Your patience is greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Chairman, I have one more late-minute addition. I'm going to call Chris back up to the, I guess you've hit every committee, haven't you? Good for you.
I'd just like to be in front of you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. This item is not on your agenda, but many of you will remember in 2015 we worked with the state treasurer on a piece of legislation that allowed the treasurer to invest some of our dollars, particularly those dollars that are most appropriate for long-term investments, such as some of our endowment funds and reserve balances, in an investment that was different than the original state pooled investment fund. And at that time, after that bill passed, you were asked by the state treasurer to pass a resolution that essentially allowed him to manage those investments for us. In the last legislative session, the one that just ended, there was a slight amendment done to that original statute. The original statute only allowed the state treasurer to invest our funds in items that were explicitly guaranteed by the federal government. This amendment would also allow the state treasurer to invest those things, our money, in things that are implicitly guaranteed by the federal government, such as Freddie Mae, Fannie Mac, the federal home loan program. So basically what I'm telling you is, thanks to a subtle change to that statute we passed in 2015, the state treasurer will have greater flexibility in investing our dollars, hopefully yielding a higher return. As a result of that amendment, though, we need to pass a new resolution. That resolution is substantially similar to the resolution we passed in 2015, and I'm happy to read it to you, but I will tell you that it is somewhat lengthy. But what we are asking today, Mr. Chairman, is that the Budget Committee pass this resolution forward to tomorrow so that it can be voted on by the full Commission.
Chris, has that been provided to the Budget Committee?
If it has not at this time, I will be more than happy to get those copies to you before the final vote tomorrow. I'm not certain whether or not it was in the packet or not.
Okay. I did read it a couple of days ago, and it is lengthy and financially dry. But, so I guess we can either, A, table this till in the morning and go into committee before we go into session, or we can just take a vote now. Okay, so do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second? Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes the Budget Committee. Oh, no, well, I'm sorry, it doesn't. We have established a working budget meeting on August 8th at 8 a.m. At the office in Nashville. And again, that's August 8th, that's a Wednesday, and we're going to address budget issues and work through the budget at that time.
Thank you, Commissioner Sanders. And Chairman Holbert, are you considering the Wildlife Committee meeting that same time afterwards?
I am considering that date.
Great. So any other business or comments from the commission?
May I ask a question on that what Chris just talked about? We, and I don't know whether we can even answer or not, but we, to date that I know of, we have not seen any of that money come back, that interest or increase in the asset come back to operating budget. And we really didn't have a good vehicle to do that. I believe the last time we talked to the treasurer's office, we tried to do it every 2 or 3 months, and they said that wouldn't work. Has there been anything further discussed with the treasurer's office about annually or something getting liquidating some of that for operating money?
Ken Tarkington is our primary person that talks with the treasurer's office, and Ken and I have discussed that several times over the last several months. The treasurer's office, and I'll ask Ken to wave at me if I get off track, but the treasurer's office maintains that it's still, we need to be in it for the long run, and that any money that would transfer back and forth, they would need a substantial up to sometimes as much as 6 months notice that's when we're going to take that action, because they have to figure that into their sale, because it's not instantaneous, of course. And everything that's in that fund that's reinvested now, I hate to use these words, but essentially is all paper things. It's because nothing has been sold or nothing has been bought, anything that went up or anything that went down is just reflected on those statements, but there's been no real money changed hands.
All right, I understand. Do we have monies now that are in a trust fund account for lifetime license sales that have been sold between 2015 and 2018 that's sitting in a different account code that we could invest in that account, and that add to that?
There is a portion of it. To be exact, if we could deflect those real numbers until this budget meeting, we can tell you what those are. But we didn't invest all of the money, and we invested a portion of it. And it comes from not only lifetime license, but also what we generally refer to as our agency reserve. And part of it's still in the state pooled investment fund, which is the one that it was in before we went into the scenarios that we're in now of investing in a separate fund. So there's some in the state pool investment fund, and there's some in the investments that the state treasurer makes for us, but not all of either of those funds is invested. We're trying to stay within those guidelines that the commission gave us for making sure a specific reserve is there, and also making sure that we didn't want to put too much in either one until we knew kind of what was going to perform. And it's been up and down, more down than up over the last 6 months.
But it's more than what we were making before. Anyway, the point is that the trust fund money is not. You may be making 0.7% of 1% or 0.07% or something on it. Those funds can't be. They're not like the reserve. So shouldn't we have all of that invested in a potentially better spot? I mean, I would think so.
Well, actually, the state pooled investment fund now, I think, is up to about 1.2%, somewhere in that neighborhood.
It's actually
1.7. So it's up significantly higher than when it was 0.001.
Right.
So it's moved up quite a bit. The other one rises and falls as the stock market does. So the last few months have not shown increases, and some of them actually shown decreases. But overall, again, unless we sold today, there's no gain, there's no loss.
Right.
Any other discussion, Commissioner McLaren?
I have recently been approached by 2 different licensing agents in my counties, and one of them has explained to me that he's losing money selling licenses for us, and he's not sure how much longer he's going to continue to provide that service for the public, and he's not counting his employees' time or his paper or his computer. He's just talking about the fees that he gets versus what he's paying out. So if we could look into that, I hate to lose. I think this one particular guy is probably the only agent in the county he's in. So have we got any help, or is there some answer to that out there, Director?
In the statutory allowance that the commission has to raise license fees, it's specifically on license and not on the fee for the agent. The agent would make sure that the agent fee is in statute would have to be changed by the legislature. So we can't change that part unless we go through the ordinary legislative process. They're given 50 cents for a permit and $1 for a license, where some of them were losing money that we put out information about was when they would make credit card sales. And when they'd make the credit card sales, of course, they had to pay a percentage to the credit card company. And some of those said that on like a permit or something like that, if it wasn't a substantial amount of money, they actually lost money. They have the ability to charge a reasonable fee if it's a credit card. If it's a cash transaction, they have to stay within what's been given them by the legislature. If they're doing a credit card transaction, they can do a reasonable fee to recoup what it costs them for that credit card purchase. So if that's the case, there is some avenue for improvement. Otherwise, it has to go before the legislature.
Okay. One of his statements, and I'm not a licensing agent, I'm just kind of relaying what he was saying. He said, if I go online and get my license, it costs me $3. And if I go to him, it only costs me $1. So he was saying, why can't the 2 fees be the same?
Yeah, I don't have a really good answer for you, Chris, yet.
Yeah, the difference here, on our online transactions, Branch charges a convenience fee, which is what Director Carter alluded to, that a license agent does currently have the flexibility to charge individuals right now to recoup that. Actually, Branch doesn't collect an agent fee. That $3 is all that they collect. It does not come back to the agency in any fashion. It stays with Branch as our online vendor. As long as our physical agents are clearly posting the cost of the license, the amount of the agent fee, and then any additional convenience fee that they are charging, as long as that is posted for the consumer, they have the ability to do that. So that's an effort to help them recoup some of those costs. We certainly don't want our agents losing money. We need to keep as many of them as we can.
Okay, thank you.
Any other business or comments from the commission?
Just to piggyback on top of that same subject of the $3 that Branch charges, are they absorbing the credit card cost, or is that passed back to TWRA? Okay, so that's their fee to cover their, okay, thank you. Right. Yeah, but they don't pass the credit card cost back to us. Thank you.
Any other comments? Director Carter? Great. Well, with that, we are adjourned until 9 a.m. in the morning. Thank you.